Hello everybody and welcome back to Cast Album Chat with Tyler. Thanks for joining me again. We're doing a little switcheroo on this video today. Last time I made a video about Starlight Express, very specific one production. So we're going from the micro back to the macro again. Today we're kind of doing something slightly different because today we're talking about a special type of recording. So buckle in, because today we're talking about cast albums that were recorded but never released. So before I start getting into the meat of this video, once again with all my notes here, I did want to thank members of the Facebook groups Cast Album Collectors and Universal Musicals. I posted this question if anyone knew of recordings that had been recorded but not released. Unfortunately, there was a little bit of confusion about what that meant. So there were a lot of people that were talking about shows that really went unrecorded. Or that the recordings are not readily available, that, you know, they're out there, maybe they're on vinyl only, not streaming. But I did get some pretty good answers here. This is not by any means comprehensive whatsoever. I know that there are going to be recordings that I miss, but these were the ones that kind of jumped out at me, and I'm going to try to break them down into sections, although you'll see here that there'll be a little bit of overlap sometimes between the two. Also, we kind of get into the gray area here of, you know, is a promo an unreleased recording? You know, it just depends on its availability, who was given the recording. So, you know, we'll kind of put that little caveat there whenever we talk about those specific recordings. So anyone that knows me, either online or in person, knows that I mostly focus on non-English language cast recordings. And even if I do, a lot of the times they'll be, you know, Australian, New Zealand casts, or something a little bit outside of the norm that we usually hear about online. But there are a couple of recordings that did kind of jump out to me when I was compiling this list that I wanted to talk about. Most recently, talking about cast recordings, cast albums that were recorded but never released. The one that really jumped out to me was the most recent Paradise Square. I think this was a producer issue. He has had a history with kind of not so kosher doings, I would say. I want to say that, you know, a lot of the people involved were never paid, but from what we know, Paradise Square, the Broadway cast recording, was recorded, but not released. So, you know, it kind of breaks my heart for everyone involved that not everybody's going to be able to hear the score. So that's the one that really jumped out to me. Another one that was mentioned, and I didn't realize that it was ever actually recorded, was the original, I guess you could say, the Broadway recording of Lestat. I know it had an out-of-town tryout that maybe had a demo. I believe it was San Francisco. But you know, that was never widely available either, I don't believe. But I didn't realize that the Broadway company was recorded, that they just didn't release the album. Of course, it was not a big success. This was also around the time of Wild Horns Dracula, Dance of the Vampires, both of which flopped. And then Lestat just kind of followed that order there. So unfortunately, that was not released. Hopefully someday, because these are actually in existence, we know they're there and very mainstream, I would say. I'm hoping that someday we'll be able to see these come out. There are some cast recordings that I'll talk about a little bit later, but you know, it's been a long wait to get them. And some of these kind of fall under the studio cast recordings. I've spoken about J Records, that's Entertainment Records if you're in England. But you know, there was a especially long wait for Anyone Can Whistle. Most of it was recorded during the 90s. And then I was very happy a few years ago when I met John Yap before the final release of Anyone Can Whistle, when he said that he was working on actually getting that one released. So these things can happen. They do come out years and years, sometimes decades after the original recording. I just hope it's sooner rather than later, because I know these are two scores that people are very interested in hearing. And if, not for a commercial reason, obviously, at least for the historical reason of hearing what these shows sounded like on Broadway. Another show that I had never even heard of before, probably because the cast recording was not released, is a show called But Never Jam Today. And if that sounds familiar, you're probably thinking of the Carol Channing song from, I believe it's Alice Through the Looking Glass. I can't remember the name of the TV movie that they made, but she sings, jam tomorrow, jam yesterday, but never, never jam today. And apparently this is Lewis Carroll. And so it was an Alice in Wonderland musical from 1979 by Bert Keys and Bob Larimer. And I just wanted to thank a special shout out to Mark Kachansky for bringing that up in one of the Facebook groups, because I had never heard of it. But whenever I was looking on castalbums.org and getting a bit more information on the show, it does seem that the show was actually recorded. But much like Paradise Square, there were some rights issues and maybe the performers were not paid properly. So that was never released. So let's keep our fingers crossed that that one will come out in the future at some point as well. Hopping over from Broadway to LA, apparently there is an unreleased cast recording of Hair from Los Angeles from 1969. The show really made a jump over to LA very quickly. It wasn't a difficult show to kind of reproduce in another theater. It wasn't a big mega musical or anything as far as the physical production was concerned. So they moved on over to LA. A lot of the original Broadway company went to the show, the production in LA, including two of the authors. And the interesting thing is that I believe they had left the show by the time that this fabled overnight recording session happened for the Los Angeles company. Like I said, they opened in '68. They recorded this in 1969. And of course, Ted Neely is on it. I believe he's playing Claude. So of course, he was a replacement in that company. So this happened a little bit later on. But that does exist out there. Some people have made some covers for it that I'll probably throw up here. It's another thing I wanted to mention about this video is I will throw up some pictures of kind of mock covers that have been made. But obviously, since these recordings were never released officially, the vast majority of them have no cover art. So you're kind of getting what you're getting. They're not credited to many times to whoever created them. So thank you so much for whoever created these. A lot of these are floating around in unofficial forms. If it's on your phone, if it's on your computer, at least you have some cover art to assign to that recording, even if it was never published and released in physical form. And a couple of more English language cast recordings from actual productions that I wanted to talk about. The first one was Rent Remixed. I know that this is available on YouTube. You can search for it. It's just kind of a little footnote, honestly. I don't think it was a production that was received very well. But they have actual recordings in the studio of this production, very different sounding than the original production. So if you want to check it out, I believe it is on YouTube. It's called Rent Remixed. And definitely do a little bit of research on it, because it has like kind of a rocky story, and how they kind of futzed around with the maybe not the storyline, but just kind of the whole point of the show. It was I want to say at least 10 years after the original London production, if not the original Broadway production, and it's just kind of a different animal. So that's kind of an interesting one to listen to if you're a fan of Rent. And also, talking about London cast recordings that were never officially released, this one is one of my favorites, and I have to thank David Yazbek for putting this on his website and really kind of sharing this with the world. Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown, the original London cast recording. There was a demo released online first, and then a separate full London cast recording out there. There is cover art for this one, just because that was what was on the website, and it actually says London cast recording. And And something that I find very interesting, I'm not going to post it because it's not my property, but on the composer's Instagram page, he said he found this recording lying around somewhere, and it was an actual CD of this London cast recording of Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown. So if this ever gets in front of your eyes, Mr. Yazbek, I would love to know if there is actually a physical release of this cast recording, and maybe a little bit of the history behind why it wasn't released. I know it didn't find the success that it deserved, either on Broadway or in London. Apparently the London production was much more to the liking of the composer. I love both recordings equally. I think the casts are fantastic in equal measure, but they're so different and they have different feels to them. Unfortunately, this recording is not available online anymore, and that's all I'll say about that. But you know, if this is ever released again in the future, definitely snatch it up, because this might be one of my absolute favorite unofficially released cast recordings. I think I said that right. Who knows? I did want to do a short little section on unreleased studio cast recordings. I know that sounds like a very strange thing to talk about because these were, you know, obviously recorded, but there's no production associated with the majority of these. But I think they're well worth mentioning. First, talking about I was talking about Anyone Can Whistle from J Records before. John really recorded a ton of his masterworks, and they're so well put together, but it's a lot of money went into them, and you know, the public might not have been there for them, the demand might not have been there for them, but luckily he's coming back and re-releasing some of them. You know, like I said, Anyone Can Whistle. 42nd Street is another example. It's a complete recording that was finally released years and years after it was recorded. There are a few others that he has. Music Man, which apparently is going to be released in the future, but we don't have a date for yet. Fiddler on the Roof as well. And then he has released some, I would call them highlights of Anything Goes, and also Brigadoon in 2 different versions, with a different leading man for the American release and the British release. But he has teased online that those are definitely in the can as full recordings. So let's hope that those are released sometime soon, because I really do enjoy the complete recordings from J Records. I've also talked about John McGlynn's recordings that he's done. I just recently completed my physical collection. I had Showboat, Annie Get Your Gun, Brigadoon, Anything Goes, and I didn't have Kiss Me Kate. And so I finally got that one. So I have completed my complete studio cast recording of the John McGlynn conducted shows. But there were specifically 3 that were not released. And there are some kind of fan covers out there that I find fascinating, so I'll add those here. But he recorded in their entirety Babes in Toyland, Oh Lady Lady, and Lady of the Slipper. They are definitely floating around out there in very good sound quality. I don't know exactly why these weren't released. I assume that you know, they were recorded, and you know, after a certain amount of time passes, I don't know if you need to have permission from everyone involved, but these were huge undertakings, huge casts, orchestras, engineering teams. So, you know, maybe just legally they can't be released, but I would love to see these released sometime in the future, because they are just a snapshot of what these shows were like in their entirety, and performed so well by a mix of musical theater and operatic casts. So, you know, if you can find these, definitely take a look at them. They are well worth listening to in their entirety. And now my bread and butter. Now is when we talk about the non-English language cast recordings that were recorded but never released. I have a few of these in some of their forms, and ironically enough, there's definitely one that I don't have that I should have in some form or another, but we'll get there. I was talking about David Yazbek before. He is probably my favorite composer composing right now for musical theater. His mind, the chord progressions, just the style of his music is at the same time surprising but instantly recognizable. And so I have always loved his musicals, from Full Monty on. But that's why I wanted to talk about Full Monty. Apparently there was a Mexican recording. I don't know if it was live or a soundboard, but apparently it was recorded in some way, shape, or form and given to the cast, but never released commercially. So I would love to hear that. I know that there are some clips of kind of publicity online of this cast in performance, and I think they're really great. So I'd love to hear this, especially in Spanish, being a language that I speak. It'd be really cool to hear this one in its entirety. There was also, any of my sleuths out there, please help me with this one. There was an Icelandic recording a very long time ago. I would say probably about 1999, 2000. I can't remember exactly. And on the National Theater's website, where the production played, they had a single version of Breeze Off the River that I downloaded and it was burned to a CDR way back in the day, and I can't find it anywhere. It exists. I have clips of it playing around in my head. But this production, really, there's not a lot of information on it other than maybe some news articles, but I can't find a logo for it, and I certainly can't find the sound file. So if we have any Icelandic folks out there, or anyone that happened to download this from the National Theatre of Iceland's website, it'd be really cool to find this one, because it was never actually released other than a promo on the website, and there are a lot of people that would love to listen to it. Going up to Scandinavia, there are a couple of recordings that are out there that are kind of released, but not really. First one I wanted to talk about was Miss Saigon from Oslo. I spoke a few weeks ago about digital albums that are out right now. This producer has released Chess, Annie, Matilda, and I wish that they would release what they have available. I think it's about 7 or 8 songs from Miss Saigon, their most recent production. They have released it on YouTube, but it's not available for purchase anywhere. So that recording exists in some way, shape, or form. It's really cool to listen to. You can listen to it legally, no problem on YouTube, but definitely check out that album. I just wish there were an official release. Another recording, which was just a small little single EP album, was Elisabeth, the Austrian musical, that was produced in Sweden at I believe at the time it was called Värmland Opera. It's now, I can't remember the name of it, I'll put it down here somewhere, but it's in Kristianstad. And they released, I think, 4 or 5 songs from... Release is not the word. They recorded 4 or 5 songs from this musical in Swedish with this cast. It is floating around out there, but the sound quality is really bad. But the cast is filled with a lot of big names from Swedish musical theater. It's a score that I happen to really, really enjoy. And I wish this one were officially released somehow. I believe there was a rights issue with this one, but nobody really knows for sure that I've spoken to. So if you happen to know anyone that was in the company, the composer, anyone from that opera company, as far as management, I would love to get to the bottom of this, because what does exist in its kind of scratchy, muffled form is very good, but of course it's not an official release. Another recording that was mentioned in one of the Facebook groups was the Rocky Horror Picture Show from 1986 in Mexico City. There was definitely a production associated with this recording, but nobody seems to be able to find an actual vinyl or tape of this production. Interestingly enough, there was a television special, once again, I forgot the name, but I'll put it down here, of this production, but it was kind of abridged. And I think that they actually used this cast recording as backing tracks for this television special in 1986. But interestingly enough, when I was kind of comparing the two, they're both available on YouTube, the full cast album and the television special. When I was listening to them, the audio does match up for sure with the numbers that, not the numbers, the musical numbers that coincide, the songs. But there are actually songs on this cast recording that are not in the television special. So originally I was thinking that the songs were just kind of a rip from a really good quality recording of the television special, but it seems to actually be the other way around, in that yes, there was a production, yes, it was recorded, and this recording was used in the television special, even though the television special didn't include all of the numbers that are actually on the recording. So definitely check it out on YouTube. You'll probably be able to find it under El Show de Terror de Rocky. So check that one out. It's a really nice little time capsule for what musical theater was like, and especially rock musicals, in this case a pop musical, in Mexico in the 1980s. Another little shout out to my friend Robert. He brought up the musical Barbarella, which played in Vienna in Austria a while ago. There was a recording made. It was a full, I don't know if it was a full cast recording, but it was at least a good chunk of the highlights of the show that was released to, I think, 100 patrons that were on some kind of mailing list. Don't know how they chose them. I've actually never seen this one pop up to be able to purchase on eBay or Discogs. So it does exist out there, and it was technically released, but this is a bit in the gray area of what is recorded and unreleased. This one was definitely recorded and semi-released. So if you can find it, snatch it up, because it is extremely rare. And if you thought you were getting through a video without me talking about Andrew Lloyd Webber, you were very wrong. Some of these recordings are actually why I wanted to do this video, and I was just scratching the surface with it, but I have heard these recordings before. I know they're out there, but they just kind of ran into rights problems. First one is Cats from Prague. There are a couple covers out there floating around, but there is definitely a, not a complete, but a very full recording of the Prague cast of Cats. And it's really great. It's kind of slightly reorchestrated in a way, and I listened to this one a lot. The cast is great. The orchestra is fantastic. Just kind of the downside to this, and with a lot of these recordings that go unreleased, so we don't have a cast list for this. And what does happen a lot of the times, especially in Europe, is they will double, triple cast if the show is in repertory, or just to give jobs to more actors and singers, I guess. And so with this production of Cats, there were a few actors that played these roles, and we have no idea who's singing the role on the recording. I kind of did a little bit of sleuthing to figure out exactly who it might be, and I kind of pieced that together for my own iTunes library. But I think that some of these tracks might be out there on YouTube as well. So if it's fair game, go and find it. It's a fantastic recording, and that is the Prague, Czech Republic cast recording of Cats. Going back down to Mexico, Starlight Express from the late 90s, Expreso Estral in Mexico, played a very, very short run. And it followed, from what I understand, the Las Vegas version of the show, which was slightly shortened, which in and of itself was a slightly shortened version of the London revisal that they did in 1992, which has its own recording. But the Mexican company apparently did record an album, and I can't really tell what the truth is in here. I've got a lot of information on the production itself. I have the program, I have the little playbill that goes with it, that luckily a friend sent me in the 90s. I was unfortunately too young to go down at that time to see the show on my own. But there are a couple of recordings on YouTube. Sound quality is not the best. And they both sound like they were done live, possibly, but I'd have to go back and listen to them to find out. But the rumor is, that they were ready to release this cast recording, but, the whole production just went belly up. It was never released, but luckily we have some really good performances on there. A couple of the performers have since passed away, so it's nice to hear their voices on these recordings and to have this little time capsule there for Starlight Express in Mexico in the late 90s. And the final recording I wanted to talk about is one that is quite literally very personal to me. For anyone that knows me in person, I was lucky enough to be in the original German production of Love Never Dies called Liebe stirbt nie. And then I was also doubly lucky to do the North American tour when it came back to the United States, or not came back, when it premiered in the United States. So, you know, I was hoping that this was going to be my time. Being such a cast recording guy before, I was over the moon when they said they were going to come in and record the show live during our previews. I don't think it's any secret that this production was, we had a lot of technical problems. Even on opening night, we had a show stop. I think I can tell these stories. It's been years since it happened. But you know, we had a motor fall out of the flies off of the mask curtain. I think it was opening night. We had a show stop because there was a big chain that was hanging down that was not safe for the cast. So I can't remember exactly how they were going to piece this together, but I know that, you know, they had the full recording ready. We signed a contract, you know, if it were ever to be released. Unfortunately, you know, we were waiting, I think it was a couple of months, to figure out that they were not actually going to release the recording, which is not typical for Germany. Lately, maybe more so than ever, they've not been releasing all of their productions. Luckily, they are coming out with a new recording of Hercules coming up soon, so it's not like they've stopped completely. But, you know, I think this was a time that they were sort of running into some financial problems at Stage Entertainment. Luckily, it seems that they've rebounded a little bit after the pandemic. But unfortunately, we did hear that RUG decided, RUG being Really Useful Group, Andrew Lloyd Webber's production company, just decided they were not going to release this. But don't let the rumors fool you. It was actually recorded during previews. And it might have actually been mixed somewhere. So if there's anybody out there that happens to have this or know somebody that has heard the final product, it'd be great to people that were in the cast. It was a very special time in my life and I'll never forget it. But I will say, as each year goes by, I forget it a little more, you know, bit by bit. But, you know, I do remember when we were in previews, you know, we had the kind of mobile mixing studio outside in a little trailer. So yes, it is out there. And it was actually used in some way, shape, or form. We did do we had an appearance on the Helene Fischer show. She's a pop star that has a Christmas concert every year on television. She invites all the new musicals to come and perform. Sometimes she'll perform with them. She just didn't fit into our numbers, so it was all our original cast. And they used our tracks because of the, you know, the sound system, the way that it worked. They had a lot of people coming in and out. They didn't have enough microphones. So we did use a track for that, for the most part. I know that our trio had a couple of live lines in there. But if you can find that online, that's the closest thing you're ever going to find of a cast recording from this show and this production. That was what we recorded live and what was going to be the original live Hamburg cast recording of Love Never Dies, Liebe stirbt nie. Luckily, our Phantom, Gadar, did record Till I Hear You Sing Once More before the show opened, and I actually think that's how I found out that he was going to be playing the Phantom, is, you know, they released the cast list while I was working some terrible day job in Spain. And they announced this with him singing the single. So that also exists out there. There's the promotional single with Gadar singing Till I Hear You Sing Once More. And then our lovely performance on the Helene Fischer show. I was lucky and sneaky enough to save the track that they sent us to record with. You know, I do luckily have small recording of our ensemble doing Coney Island, Rachel singing Love Never Dies, and also Gadar singing Till I Hear You Sing Once More. So that's very special to me. I wish one day it would be released, in its entirety, or if somebody would just kind of reach out to us and say, here, you put in all this work on this production, why don't you listen to it? But until then, I'll keep on dreaming. So I think that's all I have for unreleased cast recordings that were in fact recorded. If there are any that pop up to you, come to mind, please tell us in the comments. I love it when people comment. We did get a comment last time on the Starlight Express video of someone that was actually in the Japanese-Australian touring company. So that was very special to hear that these videos are reaching people that were either in the productions or went to go see them, or just have great memories of the recordings themselves. So please put down in the comments anything that you have to add to this. Any questions? We love to do a little bit more research. I definitely would love to do a follow-up video to this, either with recordings that were unreleased that are later released, or if we can unearth a bit more information on why some of these were not released, just kind of what happened. So once again, comment down below, make sure you hit the like button, and I would love it if you would subscribe to the channel. Thanks again for joining me with Cast Album Chat with Tyler. Bye.